No one thought this was going to go more than a season.
Well, no, my agents were like, you don't want to do this.
But wait. Why did you do it then if everyone was saying don't do it?
Because I read it. I read the pilot script, and I didn't even see zombies in it. I read a guy that woke up and the world was ended, and he's like, where's my family? I was like, this is great.
Hey, it's Guy Raz here, and this is The Great Creators, the place where I have conversations with some of the most acclaimed actors, musicians, and performers of our time. And on the show today, actor Norman Reedus, who plays the beloved Daryl Dixon on The Walking Dead.
The head of marketing, who's in charge of all the merchandise and stuff, she goes, you outsell the whole cast in merchandise 100 to 1. And I was like, oh shit, maybe they won't kill me off next week.
Off screen, Norman's had a fascinating life. And he shares some great stories in this conversation about his childhood, training on the tennis courts with Andre Agassi, and living a punk rock lifestyle abroad.
I squatted in a house with a bunch of people, and we would, take ecstasy and go to the park on the weekends, and then we would eat potatoes for dinner. That's all we did.
He also talks about how he stumbled into big acting jobs with no formal training. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with actor Norman Reedus. Let's go back to your childhood. Why were you moving around so much? I know your parents divorced when you were very young. So tell me about why you were constantly moving. I mean, San Francisco, Palo Alto, and, Japan, and all these, Texas. What was going on?
My dad wasn't really around very much. He was a businessman. He's very like that movie Mad Men. And, he traveled around with the guys and they did work stuff. My mom kind of raised me on her own. It was like odd job to odd job, which caused us to move to a lot of different apartments and different neighborhoods and different schools. And then I lived in an apartment complex. I met a friend there and I became friends with his mother, and the mother would buy me shoes and stuff like that and make sure I had dinner. And she sort of, in a way, kind of adopted me and without adopting me, but she played tennis. And to spend time with her and to get me into that, she started to teach me tennis. And I got really good at tennis. I played a tennis tournament and I won the tennis tournament, but I was 12. I was supposed to be either 14 and under or 12 and under. I can't remember. But I had to play 18 and under because they were full. And I ended up winning the tournament. And I think because I was, in soccer socks up to my knees and I had a little green visor you could see through. And I used to just hit the ball as hard as I could. And I think for that reason, I was in the newspaper in a picture. Anyway, a tennis coach saw me at a tournament and went to my mom, and he came to me and he said, hey, I'm a tennis coach. And I was like, yeah, I talked to my mom. And he talked to my mom for a couple minutes and she started packing my bag. And then I left with him and traveled around.
He said, I want to take this kid and train him to become a professional.
Correct, yeah.
And that became your life as a teenager, right? Just traveling around, training as a tennis player.
Yeah, a lot of it. I was sponsored by clothes and, it was like little private planes to matches. I got out of school early. I practiced a bit at Bollettieri's with Andre Agassi. But when that ended in my head, I was playing in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I was playing a tournament where I had to beat a guy for a ranking. And I twisted my ankle, but I still had to beat this guy in the next round. That was the whole point. And I twisted my ankle really bad, and he had taken a bucket from the hotel and filled it full of ice. And I was, shooting stuff up in my ankle and then also soaking it in a freezing trash can. And I was in my mind, I was like, I don't want to do this. It wasn't fun anymore. So I ended up, my mom moved to Japan, and I had called her and I said, hey, can I come live there? Right. And then I ended up going there when I was 18, I guess.
Wow.
And then from there, I kept going into Tokyo, to see Tokyo. And then I became friends with this young guy who was studying to run a French restaurant in Tokyo. And his father owned a French restaurant in France, and he was going to start a restaurant there and run this restaurant and all this other stuff, and sort of as an apprentice. And he had an apartment in Roppongi, and I was in Tokyo. So I was going out there, and I was going out there and I was having fun, and I sort of figured out how to live out there, and hanging out with people that got free food and stuff, and into places free. And I sort of started running with that group and ended up living there. And then the group that I met there is how I ended up going to Tooting Bec, and we all kind of squatted
Tooting Bec
house.
in the UK.
Correct. It's at the end of the Northern Line, just outside of London.
Yep.
And, we took turns like selling postcards in Piccadilly, and, we just ate potatoes all the time. And
this is in the late, I think probably in the late 80s, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about that time frame?
Yeah.
It sounds like you were just kind of following whatever was the next adventure. There was no plan.
Yeah, I never even thought about that, about acting at all. I was kind of an artsy-fartsy high school type of kid. I listened to Bauhaus, and I would do, photography classes, and, go to cemeteries and develop my own photographs. I was, punk rock sort of kid, and I liked art. I always thought maybe I'd like to do something in the arts, but that involved me living in like a creepy house with a bunch of cats and not answering the door, but I never thought anything like what I'm doing now.
So you end up in, as a, I guess, teenager, maybe early 20s, living in London. And again, just not, like if I were to find you in London at the time, it's like, oh, hey, you're Norman, nice to meet you. What are you doing here? What would you say?
Whew. I was, what was I doing there? I think I squatted in a house with a bunch of people, and we would, take ecstasy and go to the park on the weekends next door, Clapham Common, and then we would eat potatoes for dinner.
Jacket potatoes.
That's all we did. And I don't know what I was doing. I think I was just sort of trying to find myself. I think I spent most of my youth just trying to figure out who I was. I just did the Criterion collection, when you go into their closet and you pick movies that are influences you. And I was terrified because I was like, I'm going to have to talk about like Truffaut all day and like, Godard. And, the truth is I've been working so much, I barely watch movies anymore. And then I started like picking these movies and like talking about the movies. And I was like, they all, like Midnight Cowboy, like, I remember seeing, that movie came out in 1969. I was born in 1969. I remember seeing that at a young age, and I wanted that leather jacket with the tassels. I wore that jacket everywhere. Like it could be 100 degrees. That, you form your personalities based on so many things you see, but you never know where they're going to take you. You're inspired by certain things. And, now I have a new, I don't know if we're talking about it. I think you meant the photography book, but yeah. I just saw the new one. I just saw the new book. It's fucking awesome. And I have, it's my fourth book now. And that book, I was like, holy shit, this is like, for some reason I saw that book and I was like, oh my God, you're doing it. Like the other books were great too, but like, I was like, oh wow. Like
this is your book of photography, which we'll talk about as well.
It's crazy good. But it's not even that, it's the way it's put together. It's the way it's presented. It made it really real all of a sudden. And then, talking about Midnight Cowboy and Harold and Maude and these movies.
Harold and Maude. What a great film.
But like that
Beautiful
lady
film.
in Harold and Maude, like struck me so hard watching that movie and what her message was in that movie. And then I see Rosemary's Baby and I'm like, it's her. That's the lady. And, I have so many relationships with older men. I'm fascinated by older women and older men. Like I'm talking about like my parents' age. And I think the men, like, when I worked with Scott Wilson, I just latched on to Scott Wilson. When I worked with Chris Christopherson, I latched on to Chris Christopherson. And there were times when I was a kid, people would say, oh, what does your dad do? I'm like, he's a fireman. He's an astronaut. He's a policeman. Like, I just make shit up. But like, so many lines from these movies I've said in my real life, so many story points of my life, that it seems like you just black out your entire childhood, and then these little like clouds pop up, and you're like, oh, that's the cloud I was standing under when I formed that opinion of myself about my life. But as far as art, I never thought I'd live a life of art. Although I always did art, I always took pictures. I used to make sculptures out of rock and metal and wood, and I used to do art shows to pay the rent. I used to live in a guy's garage while I was doing an art show, because the art show was the most important thing. I needed whatever money I had for this stuff, but you never know where you're going to end up or what you're going to do. But I don't know. I always left the doors open for opportunity, not intentionally, but it just sort of ended up that way.
It seems like there's so many things to unpack there. I mean, talking about relationships with seeking out relationships with older men, and not to sort of psychoanalyze, but obviously your dad wasn't around when you were growing up, and it makes sense that you were looking for mentorship. You were looking for connection.
Yeah, but I always picked the cool one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't any old guy. It was like
pretty cool.
It was like, you guy. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Scott Wilson was the same way. I just fucking fell in love with him the minute I saw him. But old ladies too. Like, I love to be in the company of people that can teach me something, or I like to listen to their stories. Like all of that stuff. So
you ended up moving to LA in the 90s, and there's a lot that started to happen. I mean, you were working at a motorcycle shop for some time, and you kind of fell into acting. I mean, in fact, I've seen you were in music videos, like some iconic videos, Fake Plastic Trees, Radiohead's video, Violently Happy, Bjork song. You were in those videos. I've seen them, and it's so weird for me to see you in those videos, because your face is so distinctive. How did that happen? I mean, you didn't go to LA to become an actor, right?
No. So I ended up moving downtown LA before there was a downtown LA. Right? It was just like artists that lived down there. Yeah. And I became friends with people who were like art directors, and because we would do art shows down there, and so I became friends with the people that were the artists. And there was a guy named Tarsem Singh, he's a great director, and he and his girlfriend at the time, a girl named Fatima, they were doing the Losing My Religion video, right? But that group were the David Finchers. They were, all those young directors at the time were part of. I can't remember the name of their company, but Tarsem was in it, David Fincher was in it. A whole bunch of them were in it, and they all became big directors later. But you'd start doing commercials and movies, or commercials and music videos on your way to becoming the director. And I did one, and then they thought I was nice enough or whatever, and that I wasn't like the normal casting guy, I guess, for that. But they sort of passed me around. You did what? You did one of the videos. I did a Keith Richards video, which was fun because he was great. He took me to his trailer, and he's like, "Norman, come with me." And he's getting a haircut. And he goes, "You know how I got this haircut?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "My mom gave me money to get my haircut when I was a little boy, and I kept the money and cut my own hair, and it's been like this ever since." Like, he was great. But anyway, I did that one. I did the REM Strange Currencies one. I did Radiohead. I did a whole bunch of them. But it was because those directors were like, "Oh, Norman, put Norman in it, put Norman in it." And you work all day for like $200, and that would buy me stuff. You know what I mean? So, but you were not like, from what I gather, you kind of had fallen into modeling. Somebody saw you and said, "Hey, you should," or somebody saw you and said, "Hey, maybe you should do this, or you should consider being an actor." But it seems like it wasn't really like your ambition. It was the other way around, actually. Oh, right, okay. So the modeling thing, it started with Prada, right? So I was doing a movie called 6 Ways to Sunday, right, with Isaac Hayes and Debbie Harry, and it was like my second movie. And the movie starts off, and Debbie Harry's giving me a bath, and she's my mom, but I'm way too old to be getting a bath from my mom. And it's about a kid who has split personalities. It was my second movie. And there's a movie called Floating I did right before that, which got me agents and managers and stuff like that, because that movie got passed around LA within all the agencies before it was out, and I was unrepresented, and then everybody came at me like to represent me, and then I picked somebody and blah, blah, blah. But that movie, Six Ways to Sunday, Annie Leibovitz, the photographer, knew the director and came to set to shoot still photographs, right? Mm-hmm. So then she had dinner with Mucha Prada, and they were using a series of actors in their campaigns, right? So Joaquin did it, a Japanese actor did it. There was a couple of actors that did it, right? Willem Dafoe did it. But so she's having dinner with Mucha, and she's like, oh, I'm trying to find the next actor for the next series of photographs. And she goes, oh, I shot this kid today on set. And then I got a call from them saying, oh, it's between you and Nicolas Cage to do Prada campaign. And I was like, what's Prada? And they said, oh, well, if you do it, they'll bring you to Paris and they'll give you a ton of free clothes, and this is them. And at that time, I was living downtown LA, and we all kind of shared a suit, you know, me and all the guys. And so I was like, never been to Paris before. So they ended up giving it to me. And then actually a guy who shot that ended up becoming a director. That was kind of my intro. And then later, when I hooked up with Helena, there were...
Helena Christensen, who was your partner for a few years.
Yeah. I think because of that connection, it kind of opened doors to do more stuff. And some of the stuff we did together, and every once in a while I do something by myself. But I think going out with her kind of like open fashion, I guess, to me a little bit.
I'm curious about how you learned how to be an actor, because it's a skill. I mean, there's obviously talent involved, but there are things that you learn how to do. And when you started to act, how did you figure out how to be an actor, how to embody a character? Because that's hard.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But you never get to a spot where you're like, oh, I got it, you know? So,
yeah.
So the first movie was called Floating, right? And this is, I was like 17 or 18. This is right when my dad's dying, right? This is when he's gone. He's never lived with me, but this is the time when I keep getting calls. He's going to die. Come.
Yeah. You're in your late 20s at this point, I think.
Maybe late 20s, yeah. Anyway, so there was maybe 6 years where he was hanging on. There was a scene in the movie where the movie's about a kid who lives at home, and he's at the age where he's supposed to, they graduate high school and you go off to a college, you start your life doing whatever. And all his friends are doing it, but his father is in a wheelchair because of a drunk driving accident. And he's got to stay home, take care of his dad. So there's like this all this hostility at home, right? For all these reasons. But the director, we're shooting in Maine, and it was super cold. And the director came up, and it was a scene where I had to go out on a patio, and he stands up out of his wheelchair, right? He gives me a hug, which is a big deal in the movie. And the director goes, so how do you want to prepare for this? And I'm like, well, what are my options, right? And he talks to me for a second. I go, you know what, just give me a phone and come get me in like 10 minutes. He goes, okay, we'll do that. And he gives me a phone. I call my dad. My dad can't really talk, right? So he's kind of just listening to me on the phone, right? And then we go to do the scene, and I just cried so much that we had to do it again because this stuff came out of my nose and everywhere else. And then we do it again, and we take a break for lunch. And I went to my little trailer just to lay down, and I didn't go to lunch. And they all ate in a tent with heaters. And one of the grips came up to me, and he goes, I know this is your first movie. He goes, but I want to tell you, like, nobody talked at lunch. Everyone just kind of sat there. It was quiet. And I was like, oh, that's what we're doing, right? And that taught me something. I don't know what it taught me exactly, but it taught me something. And then Walking Dead, when we started that, that core group of actors had already been doing like press and stuff. I was I didn't show up till I think the second or third episode. And but I was really nervous and I didn't know how I was going to play that character. And and it's a whole thing where I'm freaking out. And I turn, we're doing this scene where they say they handcuff my brother to this roof, and I turned around and there was just like 12 actors. Like, what are you gonna do, new guy? And so I immediately felt like a chip on my shoulder, like fuck you. You don't like me, I don't fucking like you either. And everything kind of came out of the right side of my face or the left side of my face, and I never looked anybody in the eyes, like straight on. And I'm like, that's how I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play it like, I hate everybody, you hate me, and fucking you think I'm a piece of shit and I hate you. And that's kind of where it started. And as the seasons went on, I slowly squared up and talked to people. But it was a progression of getting, feeling accepted. Not everything's a fight, which is kind of coincidental with my auditioning process, me accepting what I'm doing now for a living. It's kind of very similar because, not knowing exactly what I was doing or not being trained exactly, or, meeting celebrities and slowly, the whole fucking thing is terrifying. But, I look a certain way. I kind of look like the guy that's going to steal your purse already. So it's like, I would get roles as that guy, to the point where I'd get offered other movies and I'm like, I don't know how to be the nice guy, no, this is working. This bad guy thing is working. Can we just keep doing this forever? And then as far as The Walking Dead, that it became such a big deal while we were all in the woods making the movie or making the TV show. So we were out there like really taking it serious and it could fly off the handle so easily on a show with zombies and all these other things. So everybody played it real. Everyone had each other's back. And it kind of became this big thing,
Yeah. You mentioned this idea that like you looked like the guy who could steal your purse, which I don't think is entirely true. But, I think that a combination of the way you look maybe and also just how you carry yourself naturally kind of made sense in the sort of the heroic anti-heroes that you would go on to play. I mean, Murphy and the Boondock Saints, and then obviously Daryl Dixon, and they're amazing characters. I mean, you're very lucky that you've been able to be these characters. They're incredibly nuanced and interesting, and especially Daryl Dixon. And we can talk about the Boondock Saints forever, but I really want to ask you about Walking Dead because obviously this has taken up a huge chunk of your life. That was not the character you initially auditioned for. You auditioned for the part of Merle, right?
Well, they do this thing on that show where when they audition people, they never give them the proper sides. So, you'll be a plumber saying lines sort of like a scene, like whatever. So when I went out to LA for pilot season and they give you all the scripts, I was like buddy cop movie, roommate movie, ER movie. Everything was either a cop thing or an emergency room. They were all the same thing. And then that one, and I was like, well, this one's good. And, everybody goes, no, not that one. That's never going anywhere. But I was like, well, it's AMC and it's Gale Ann Hurd and it's.
But people said that Walking Dead, they said this is not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Not one actor on our show their agents wanted them to do.
It's interesting. I mean, I can see that, right? Because but then at the same time, I would have been like zombies and post-apocalyptic. It just maybe in 2010 when it started. I remember when it came out. It was amazing. But when you're working on it, no one thought this was going to go more than a season.
Well, no, my agents were like, "You don't want to do this one. This is the only one of the pile you don't want to do." But no,
wow.
So
wait. why did you do it then? If everyone was saying don't do it,
Because I read it. I read the pilot script, and I didn't even see zombies in it. I read a guy that woke up and the world was ended, and he's like, "Where's my family?" I was like, "This is great." But also, AMC had Mad Men at the time, Breaking Bad at the time. I was like, this network makes cool shows, and it's Frank Darabont, and it's, these people that were involved. I was like, this is gonna work. But I mostly, it was because of the pilot script. I was like, I didn't see any monster things in there. I just saw this guy trying to find his family.
Almost like that book, The Road.
To be honest, Andy and I would read that book, right? And we always thought that the show would eventually be that. Like, we would all be emaciated and have 2 teeth in our mouth, and we thought that's where we were headed. But what happens when you're on a big TV show and nobody wants you to look like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're a toy, you're all these things happen. So
you got to look good.
Like
even when there's blood on you.
Girls' pants got tighter. And I'm like, I remember they were like, it was a wardrobe change beginning of a season. And they came at me with these like skinny jeans. I guess skinny jeans were in that year. And I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to run around in these pants? And I went to Melissa actually, and I'm like, what's up with these pants? She started cracking up. And I was like, can I never change my clothes? And you can see like through this, like there'll be 5 seasons where I'm wearing the same outfit. I have a pair of pants I wore for like 8 seasons. They just turned into Frankenstein pants. And I remember Scott Wilson and I made a deal. He's like, don't cut your hair. He's like, I'm not going to cut my hair. Don't cut your hair. And I was like, why? And he's like, why would you cut your hair? Who are you trying to look good for? And he's like, it's the end of the world. He's like, nobody should cut their hair, unless they shave their head. Nobody should cut their hair. And we shook on it. We're like, don't cut your hair. 15 years it'd be done on my butt. So I had to cut a little, but, I was like, why would I change every season when it starts? Why would I have a new outfit? But everybody, the departments change, but we don't change. Showrunners change, but we don't change. So it's, I'm trying to play it as real as possible. And then going to Europe, like I didn't want to take an American show and drop it off in Paris and have it be Americanized. I wanted it to feel like a European show. I wanted the European people to accept it as their show, just like we did in Georgia. We wanted it to be their show, and I said it a million times. But there's some things you have to do and some things you fight for and some things you try to put your foot down and hope somebody listens to you,
The show, which, as you say, many people that you knew thought wasn't going to go anywhere, would become the highest rated drama in cable history. 11 seasons and just a juggernaut, like a massive,
it was
like
crazy.
Beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Such a successful show and franchise. I read that when you first got onto in the first season, because you joined in like the 3rd episode.
Yeah.
You were you kind of felt like an outsider because the cast had already known each other. They'd already been working together for a few weeks. And you kind of came on as this new person and maybe felt a little awkward or uncomfortable or like an outsider. What do you remember?
Exactly all that. They had already been doing press junkets and traveling the world and going to Australia, and everybody was buddy already until I showed up. And I didn't know, you never know how long you're going to last on that show, because back then they were killing somebody off every Sunday, You know what I'm saying? And
you did not know that you would become
no,
you
don't know those things.
Yeah, and they didn't probably know either.
There was, it was funny. Like I didn't know. I really didn't know. And then you would read a script and you get to the end, you're like, "Oof, I made it." It was literally like that. And they were super top secret with everything all the time. Then they told me once, I think it was like season 4, and the head of marketing, who's in charge of all the merchandise and stuff, she goes, you know, you outsell the whole cast in merchandise 100-1 combined.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Like what? Like action figurines and your picture on
T-shirts,
on T-shirts.
All of it, 100-1. And I was like, oh shit, maybe they won't kill me off next week, you know. But you never know because, you know, they killed off big characters, you know. But we didn't know. But then, you know, I remember like, I'm at Coney Island and these girls run over and they're like, we work at the aquarium next door. Can we show you guys something? And we all go over there. And there's a giant shark in a tank, and his face is all scratched up and teeth are missing, and on the plaque it says Daryl Dixon. I was like, "What? You named this shark after my kid?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh my god! Like they can kill me off now. Like that's better than an Emmy. That's like the greatest thing I've ever heard." And then you know, my crossbow and my vest with the wings is in the Smithsonian. Like
it's crazy.
It's right next to Rocky Balboa's Italian Stallion rope, you know, which is nuts. Yeah, just a whole bunch of things like that through the years have happened, and I'm, you know, and it's wild. So yeah, when I was in Tooting Beck, like selling postcards and eating potatoes, no, I never saw none of this.
As you became, I mean, because there's a difference between becoming like famous in Grey's Anatomy and becoming famous in a show like The Walking Dead, which is also part of a whole fandom world like Comic-Con and merchandise and comic books. This comes from a comic book, right? It's a completely different kind of fan. Like when you were in Boondock Saints, there's some of that, a little bit of that, because you know, but this is different. Like if you were, as I say, if you were a star of like Grey's Anatomy or a sitcom, yeah, people would not like you. But this is different. Like people probably, when you were out in public and out and about, like who loved this show, saw you as Daryl Dixon.
Yeah, a lot of people call me Daryl on the road.
Was that just totally mind blowing to experience that?
Yeah. It was weird though, because it you know, like so many times because I lived in New York, so, you know, and I have a son in New York, so I was always coming back here on the weekends, like all the time. But I would go from set and I would still have blood on my neck at the airport, and I'd be going through security, and they're like, "Hey, Norman," like it became fun in a weird way. But you know, like stewardess would give me stuff. I'd be in the bathroom of the airplane, like wiping blood off of me. You know, it became part of it, and it was an everyday thing. But sometimes it was overwhelming. Like levels of anxiety I didn't know I had showed themselves, still do.
Where did that come from? Because you were so good as that character you are, and so poised, and so as a viewer, it's impossible to see that, which is probably why you needed to have that anxiety. Maybe where'd it come from?
I think just you know, I think it's why I like motorcycles so much. I put on a helmet and I can disappear. You know, it just came from so many people up in my business. You know what I mean? And it's also true, like, you know, social media, Twitter was starting, like all those things, like, you know, people bum rush you, they jump on you to take a selfie. They don't even want to shake my hand. I kind of take a selfie to get likes when I go home. Like it's a whole different jam. You know, there are people I also meet that are cool, and I don't mind doing that. But like, you know, you're a JFK in the bathroom peeing, and some guy's yanking on your shoulder for a selfie, and you're literally like, "Yo, I'm doing the thing," you know, and they're like, "Fine, I'll wait for you outside." You know, you don't want to just leave. You don't want to leave the bathroom anymore. Like,
wow.
You're on an airplane. You come out of that bathroom, the whole road down the thing, phones go in the air. You know, and you're like, ha ha ha. You know.
And you can't be an asshole, because then people are like, oh, I saw Norman Reedus and he was such an asshole. Like you have to kind of be nice.
You know, plus, you know, those conventions were happening when we started, like where you go and there's 10,000 people. And those, those are crazy because you'll see like a line for 5 hours in front of you, right? And then you'll be sitting there and you'll see like, a lady and she's like, you're right. And then right next to her is her husband and his arms are folded and he's just glaring at you like he wants to kill you. He's been in line for 5 hours and you're like, so you make a point while you're saying hello to this one to be eyeballing the next one and you'll go straight to the guy. Nice to meet you, sir. And then
to disarm him a little bit.
Without a doubt. And then, because I get it. If I were waiting for a line for 5 hours as my girlfriend, I'd be furious. And then you have some people that come up and they're like, here's my key to my hotel room, and you're like, let's hide that really quick because there's 1,000 iPhones pointed at us right now. You're like, next, and you end up with 300 keys in your pockets, and you're like, but you can't entertain it because everything's being watched. And I used to go out in New York with my friends. We go to bars, we like go wherever, and it was fun. And it got to a point where my friends were like, "You're not invited." You know what I mean? Like, it's no fun. I'm sorry, but either we can go to this dive bar because my friend works there and he'll shut the door. But and plus you're in Georgia for so long.
Yeah.
You lose touch with all
you were
your
living in
friends.
Georgia. You bought a house. You like established your life there because you had to. It was filmed there.
Yeah, but all my friends in New York are all spreading out, and so you end up with your friend list gets real small, real, and I can count like on one hand my friends, and I've got like 3 fingers left over. So it's like, that's happening at the same time you're becoming more popular. It's a little bit of a mind fuck, and then, you go to these things and it's like, oh my God, they love us. We're doing good. Keep doing good. And then you have the pressure of like Sunday night numbers, and then that changed because now nobody watches television the same way. Everything's on streamers. So you can't really count the numbers even because we beat Sunday Night Football, and holy balls. And then, I know Game of Thrones was on the same night as us, and they moved their night because it was competing with that. Like we were the ones to beat, and it's becoming more popular. But then your social life is getting smaller. Your friends are starting to disappear. Like it's really crazy. And then, you act like why there's anxiety. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, pick a reason. There's all sorts of reasons.
Did you have, I'm curious, Norman, during that time, did you have anybody that you could talk to about that? I mean, on the one hand, from the outside, somebody looking at this would say, hey, you got this great job, you're famous, you're making a bunch of money, but it doesn't make your life simple. It actually can make your life harder, especially in a show like this. Like you mentioned Game of Thrones, and I think some of those actors probably went through similar kinds of things because it attracts a certain obsessive fan in a good way too, right? Not only in a bad way. So you're on this show, 11 seasons of the show. It's a lot of work, long days, and internally, I think you're kind of an introvert, right? I don't think you're the kind of person who just loves to go out and just meet people all the time.
I can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So how are you dealing with that? Were you able to?
You kind of you just get into a rhythm. You put on that face, I still have, people that I talk to. But the thing is, everybody asks you for money. They ask to borrow money. That's the first thing that happens, right?
Yep.
And then some of them you let borrow money and you never hear from them again, right? And then family members pop out of the works that you don't know. They ask for money, right? And all of a sudden you're supporting everybody you know, and you're still doing your life, which is, that can be expensive. But, I didn't really have anybody to talk to about that because you'd be like, oh shit, I got to be on a plane. I got to go to fucking I got to go to New Zealand, and then I got to go meet Josh Brolin, and then Josh and I got to ride down to the south. People are like, fuck you. I'm having so, so I get it, and to be honest, I used to be like that more.
Yeah.
I used to hate rich people. I used to hate pop. When I was in high school, I hated the rich kids. I hated the popular kids. I hated the good looking kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Then all of a sudden you become all those things.
Well, I became popular out of those, but like, I used to be the same way. I'm like, eat the rich, fucking, I hate them. I was the same fucking way. So I get it,
Yeah.
And everyone's problems are their own problems. Like, I'd go to work and like, I'd go to craft service and I'd be like, hey man, good morning. And they're like, yeah, whatever the fuck. And I'm like, the fuck did I do to that guy? And, all day long, I'm like trying to memorize my lines and think about the scenes, but all I can think about is the guy at the craft service who gave me like a shitty good morning. And I'm like, what the fuck did I ever do to that guy? I don't know if that guy just ran over his dog pulling out of the driveway. I don't know if he just got a divorce. Like,
right.
Everybody's the same, so you don't know. So you can't really bitch about your problems, because everyone's got problems. And, I bitch about going to work. I bitch about getting up at 5 a.m. I still bitch about shit. And they pay me a lot of money and I have a shark named after me. So I get it, so who am I going to talk to about stuff like that? You end up kind of sometimes having that conversation with people that are in similar situations as you.
Yeah.
But that's a whole game as well because, it's like social media. Like, am I supposed to be friends with you because you're an actor too? Like, I don't even really know you. I met you once, but are we in the same club? Are we friends? Like, you don't know, so, and I've met celebrities I didn't like at all, so, it's all relative, I think,
I think probably the people who admire your work and admire what you do, admire the craft, of how you do it, are probably genuinely interested in knowing you, right? Because, fellow actors, because they know what it means to do that work.
There is that sort of popular thing, where it's not like every actor meets you and they're like, come here. You know what I mean? There's competitive actors. I remember I won't name his name, but he was like my competition on all my auditions. Like it was always me versus him, always. And he's a fucking amazing actor. Like I think he's fucking great. He just DP'd a movie and he was fucking great at that. Like he's super talented. But for some reason I'd always be up against that one guy, And I remember like riding my motorcycle to audition and I had oil all over my hands because my bike was leaking. And then he's looking at me and he goes out in the dirt and he wipes dirt all over his hand. Like it was like a thing, So there's a competitive thing. And sometimes you meet actors by accident, like Keanu or Josh Brolin or any of those people. And you become friends with them and they're cool. But I don't know what it's like to be Keanu Reeves. Like that guy's, he's so popular. He's so good at, He's so
it's interesting. I just read an article because I'm up here in San Francisco.
Hey, I'm not smoking a lot. I just rolled this really bad.
Oh yeah, no problem.
It's the same cigarette.
Keanu Reeves. There's an article because he showed up at a coffee shop in Sonoma County, and and there was an article about it. But I imagine that there's also a connection between the two of you because of motorcycles. I mean, he makes them, and
he's a real writer. He's actually really cool. The first serious thing he ever asked me about was a different thing, and it had to do with press being aggressive, right? And I said, well, I did this like this, and I don't know what he did, but I'm not as popular as Keanu Reeves, but he's a real guy, he's like, he likes bikes. He likes putting on a helmet and disappearing the same way I do, it's your me time. Some of them you connect with, some of them you don't. There is a competitive thing. You go to like an award show, like, dude, you can cut the air with a knife sometimes, you know. But that might just me being insecure and not feeling like I belong there. So there's that too. So I don't know. It's all different, you know.
Yeah. Do you, I wonder whether you, and you don't have to talk about this because it's kind of personal, but during that time when you were on The Walking Dead, I think around that time you started to, your partner, Diane Kruger, and you were together. Did that help you? I mean, was that an outlet to talk about some of these things as well? Because she's also obviously an actor, and then you have somebody in your life that you can trust and talk to.
Yeah, there's that. It's nice being able to talk to somebody like that, who knows what I'm talking about. I mean, I had girlfriends before that weren't in the business, you know, and they became scared. There was, you know, parts of fandoms that threatened them and were looking for them to beat them up.
Oh,
and
God.
you know, they were scared to leave the house. There was my son got it. You know, my son got harassed. He still gets harassed, but he really got harassed as a kid. I remember it was like when Facebook started, he and his friends would do homework on Facebook. And he came to me and he's like, they keep kicking me off Facebook. And I'm like, why? And he's like, people take all my pictures and they make a fake profile pretending to be him. And then they kick him off being the real one. It happened so many times that he gave up. But it's hard to explain to him a reason why that's happening, you know, or like, you know, you would get people like, you know how you hurt Norman, you get to his son, you know, and then all of a sudden I got security watching my kid and he's, you know, he's 7, you know, so it's like, it's, there's good things and there's definitely bad things, but, you know, my daughter was funny the other day. We were in Paris and I'm walking down the street and this guy's like, oh my God, you're the best actor. Oh my God, love you, the best actor. And my daughter goes, he's not the best actor. I'm a better actor than him. She goes, he just acts like a cowboy. I'm a cowboy. I'm a cowboy. I was on the floor. It was like the greatest moment ever. But you know, sometimes it goes south.
This character, Daryl Dixon, who's, you know, had such a huge part. I mean, he has been a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
You've been a huge part of his life too. What do you make of that? I mean, it's kind of a weird question. But I mean, do you see him as you know, just a character that you're inhabiting, or is there, I don't know, is there kind of a relationship with him? I'm not really sure what my question is, but given that he's played such a huge part in your life, does he mean something to you beyond just as a job?
Yeah, I mean, it's an outsider character who learns to get along and play with others. That's very me in real life during this job. There's certain elements of that character that coincide with my real life. And if they're not written on the page, I force it in a direction, you know? It's made me become a better friend. It's made me have a work ethic I didn't have before.
Wow.
It's made me care about my job more. It's taught me things. I've taken things I've learned from other people and applied them to me and that character of Daryl. Daryl has taken things he's met from other characters he's met in the show and applied them to his decision making now as he's grown older in real time. There's a whole bunch of things that coincide. You know, that when you become like I guess a leading man on a thing, there's certain leading man things you do, you know. They want you to have romantic love interests. They want you, you know, I tell the writers all the time, I don't mind being the hero. I just don't want to know I'm the hero, you know? And I constantly remind them, you know, you can't please all the fans because some people want this, some people want that, some people want that. So you just have to tell your story, right? I'm not in the writer's room, right? I'm an executive producer now on the spinoff.
Yeah.
But I don't want to tell them what to write for me. We get the scripts and we can change little things like, you know, little things. But as far as storylines, the writers tell the storylines, and we bring that to life. That's the rules. That's what we're comfortable doing. I think sometimes Daryl and Norman get blurred in people's eyes, you know, not just by calling me Daryl, but you belong with this character, so let's attack Diane. You belong with this character, so let's beat up your girlfriend before Diane. You know, like, but Diane's different. Diane's like, she's like, it's just noise. It's just noise. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do to that person at the craft service table? You know, sometimes it affects me a little bit more. She kind of is just like, turn it off. You know, I don't have social media on my phone anymore at all, you know. But I will say a lot of those people that complain, their answers are answered like 2 more episodes from now, you know, and that's been 99.9% the case for 12, 13 years now. Like they'll bitch about something and then in 2 episodes, it'll be answered. And you're just like, you know, but yeah, I don't know. It's all sort of one giant social experiment. You know?
The spinoff has been renewed for another season. And this is as I say, I mean, it's an incredible character and an amazing role. And you could play this character for a long time and do other things. I mean, we haven't even talked about a whole lot about your photography, and you had your own show where you rode around a motorcycle and talked to friends. So you're able to do other interesting things. But is there a world where you could continue to be Daryl Dixon for a long time? That you would be comfortable doing that?
I'm totally comfortable with it, to be honest. I think it's very interesting to watch a character grow before your eyes in this length of time. It's very unusual that you get to do that, you know? And the more human I can make him, the better. Like even now, our show has very little to do with zombies, like very little, you know? And, you know, there was... You know, Melissa and I talked about doing a spinoff ages ago, like years ago.
Melissa McBride.
Yeah. And there was a television show that Mickey Rourke told me about called Then Came Bronson. And he said, you know, all of us delinquents, we used to love this one character on TV. And he started to explain it to me. And it's about a guy on a motorcycle traveling across country with no place to go. He's on no time frame. But he's got a certain attitude, and like he'll pull up to the gas station and this couple will be arguing, and somehow he gets sucked into their drama. But by the time the episode's over and he's leaving, their whole attitude has changed. Like, what are we fighting for, right? And that sort of became the outline for a show that Melissa and I wanted to do. And I remember Angela Kane coming to me at the end of like season 7 or something, and she's like, it's the last shot of the season. And we're sitting there and she goes, how do you see the show ending? And I go, in a giant battle and everybody dies. And people are fighting to save their friends. It's just heroic moment after heroic moment. And everybody dies. The fucking town gets burnt to the fucking ground. It's over. And I'm like, Carol, get on the bike. And we run. And there's nothing to go back to. It's all gone. So let's go see who's left in the world. Let's go see who's left. You know, there's got to be people out there. And it was an episodic sort of show where we go see who's left. And it allows, you know, it's also hard to get actors to commit to a schedule or a contract like our contract, because it's not like for a week. It's like, we need you for 5 years, possibly, you know. You know, it's hard to get actors to say, you got me for 5 years, you know, which we didn't even know we were in it for 5 years when we took it. But that was the basis for the show. And now what we're doing is sort of a variation of that. And I think it will become more like that. I don't know, I put a lot of work into this character. It's hard to just wave to a drone, bye-bye. That's it. Yeah. I want to see where it goes. I want to see where it ends. I want to see who else he finds. I want to see how it changes him. I want to, there's ideas I have for this character that have nothing to do with Daryl. Like, I mean, if you see me on Daryl Dixon, I have scars all over me. Like, my whole face looks like that shark at Coney Island.
Yeah.
which is a crazy coincidence. Now I look like the shark, but and my back looks like a road mount, you know. But I want to walk into a place and not tell them who I am. I don't want to bring my drama to this fucking place. I want to see what that life's like, there's a storyline happening right now on the show where I'm like, man, we've been running and fighting our entire adult lives. Like maybe we did it wrong. Maybe we should shorten our life expectancy, but our quality of life, maybe there's something different. Maybe maybe that's what I'm kind of grappling with this season. Like what do we, like, did we do it wrong? Like, are we gonna do this forever? Like that, So I want to see that happen. I want to see where that goes. I'm happy still playing the character. I'm still interested in the character. To me, it would be like, oh, you've done like 50 art shows and have a bunch of photo books. Are you done with photography?
Right.
Which
leads me to the question about that. I mean, you mentioned how riding on a motorcycle frees you. It sort of lowers your anxiety, your blood pressure. It's just this thing that you connect with, and it's why you do it. And when you take photos, because now you've got a new photo book coming out, and you've had a few, and you've been taking photos for a long time, what does that do for you creatively, just kind of personally, spiritually, whatever? What is your relationship to taking photos and photography, and how does it center you?
It takes me out of my head. It's funny because I really like people like Joel Peter Wicken, who spend like 2 days setting up a shot, but I don't take photos like that. If I start to daydream, I usually take the best photos. You know what I mean? And the photography itself, like, it's completely unplanned, and it's a feeling. You're like, oh, I see that way. I'm never trying to set up a great photo. It's more like, oh wow, look how the snow's falling in that corner of shadow. It's stuff like that. It's funny curating a book because I can't curate it myself because I don't think like that, right? Or an art show, right? And it's just, oh, here's new photos I've taken, and I have somebody, Laurie Dolphin, who has worked with a ton of artists, and we do shows all over. But now the shows are a little different because, we just did 2 shows in Paris, and we did one in Japan, in Shibuya, like 2 months ago. It becomes a fan event, right? So the police have to shut the street down. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
How it used to be, which I miss, is I would do a show and I'd have sculptures or whatever on the wall, and I could just go back in the corner and I could watch people watching it, and I'd watch the people, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. So, now with social media and everything, you do a show, the gallery's like, can you tweet? Can you Instagram? Can you promote? But they ain't promoting me. They're promoting their gallery, So, I know what they're doing, and I know why, and they want to make their money back or whatever, or become more popular with. But I miss those days where I'd sit in the corner and just drink a beer and watch people look at stuff.
Yeah, you've done. I mean, and you do a bunch of different things, and it makes sense because these are creative outlets. Whether it's, riding a motorcycle, talking to people, doing the photography, and art, and obviously the work you do as an actor. Do you have any interest in directing?
They ask me all the time if I want to direct a show, and I'm like, can you imagine me? Like, they used to ask me in Georgia all the time, like, hey, Denai, can you do this? Right? She'd be like, shut up, Norman. You know what I mean? Like, we're all too close for me to do that. Although I might do it. I've been thinking recently I might do it on an episode that I'm not so much in. What I like about the spinoff. When you're a show like we were in Georgia, it's bang, 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 commercial. Bang, 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 commercial. What I like about what we're doing in Europe is it breathes a bit, you know. You can see the leaves moving on the trees. It gives you time to turn around slowly. Like I remember one of our actresses in Georgia, huge theater actress, she was on the show and she was kind of new, and she's looking out the window and somebody says something behind her and she slowly turned back to talk to him. And then the episode came out and she stared at the window and then they talked and then it was her talking. And she's like, where's my slow turnaround that was on purpose. She's a big theater actress. And she was like, who did that? You know? And this is allowing us to turn around slowly if we want. It's allowing us to look at each other before we say the lines. Like, you know, those moments that are important are there, you know? So the more I do that, the more it feels different than the original show. But also, you know, originally they didn't want any foreign language. They wanted it all in English. And we're like, but we're in France and there's French people talking to French people. Like, you know, we had to fight for more of that. But, you know, I get what the nervousness is because it's working. Like, don't mess with the formula, you know. Mm-hmm. We're trying to mess with the formula just enough, you know.
Yeah. Norman, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching my conversation with actor Norman Reedus. The second season of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, is now streaming on AMC+. Norman also has a new book of photography out. It's called In Transit, and we'll put a link to it on the show notes page at thegreatcreators.com/Reedus. If you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to this channel. We post a new video every week. And, of course, we are also a podcast. You can listen to us and find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify and Apple Music. Thanks so much for watching The Great Creators. I'm Guy Raz, and we will be right back here next week with a brand new conversation.